Hello everybody, buenas a todo el mundo, ¿qué tal? Baol Bardot Bulsara here, singer in the band TNT. Baol Bardot Bulsara, cantante de la banda TNT. Estoy aquí porque hoy estreno, después de ciertos altibajos, hoy estrenamos la sección A Casual Chat With. I'm here because today we are opening the first episode in my section A Casual Chat With. And today's guest is very, very special for me. El invitado de hoy es muy especial para mí. This is a guy that I admire profoundly, both musically and personally, because a part of being a great singer and a great musician and a great songwriter, for instance, during the quarantine in the spring, every single day he released a video of good news. No matter how much shit the media were throwing at our TVs, he was always uplifting and looking for the good news in a sea of crap, you know? Este es un tipo al que yo admiro muchísimo, tanto musical como personalmente, porque aparte de ser un gran cantante, un gran guitarrista, un gran músico y un gran compositor, también es una persona increíble en cuanto a calidad humana. Por ejemplo, durante toda la cuarentena, el tipo estuvo todos los días, cada día subiendo un vídeo de buenas noticias. Al margen de toda la mierda que iba tirando la televisión, de todas las malas noticias, el tipo era capaz de sumergirse en un mar de barro y encontrar las buenas noticias y sacarlas y presentárnoslas a los demás. Siempre de buen rollo, siempre viendo lo bueno de la gente, siempre levantando los ánimos. A mí la gente así me da muchísima envidia y la admiro muchísimo. So, this guy, together with his twin brother Matthew, had a band back in the day who was multi-platinum and #1 band. I'm talking about the band Nelson, and I'm talking about, of course, Gunnar Nelson. Este señor, allá por los primeros 90, tuvo una banda que fue multiplatino en ventas, que fue número 1. Estoy hablando de la banda Nelson y estoy refiriéndome, por supuesto, a Gunnar Nelson. Este tipo vive en Estados Unidos, la diferencia horaria es muy grande y no había manera de poder tener esta charla en la hora y en el día en el que yo quiero emitir esto. Entonces no hubo más remedio que quedar en otro momento y grabar la conversación, y eso fue lo que hicimos. Es una conversación súper amena, súper divertida, no para callado el tío, es genial. Y hay una pequeña sorpresilla por ahí más o menos acabando la charla para los fans. This guy lives in the United States, so the time difference is quite huge. And there was no way for him to be available at the time and day that I want to release this. So there was no other option but having the chat at another time and recording it. And that's what I did. And you will see the chat is very funny. It's great. And it has a little surprise towards the end for the fans that you are going to enjoy. Así que nada, sin más dilación, con todos vosotros, please welcome Gunnar Nelson. Hello there. Hi, can you hear me?
All right, how's it going?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay, that's my mic, my new mic.
No, that's all good, man. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm saying, man. I mean, I have to warn you. All you're gonna hear in this little chat are not ass kissing at all. It's just, I truly mean every word. Okay.
Cool.
So,
awesome, man. So how's life living in Spain, man?
music-wise is a little shitty.
Okay.
But I mean, our background is nothing like your background. I mean, your grandparents used to listen to Sinatra, and ours used to listen to, I mean, kind of a cheesy stuff, you know. So it's hard, and people have no criteria in general here.
Oh, all right. Are you able to go out and do shows or anything like that?
Lately, you mean?
Yeah.
No, not anything from since our friend COVID-19 showed up.
It's the flu.
Everything's paralyzed. Yeah.
It's
I
just the
mean,
flu. I
a
get it.
little, yeah, a little. I mean, little hints here and there, but no, nothing
Man,
like
I'm
this.
looking forward to 2021. I don't know about you. I can't wait to go out and
Oh
start
yeah,
playing again. I'm
oh
going
yeah,
crazy.
please. Yeah, please. I mean, this is terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
and something that worries me is that before, I mean, during the summer when they were researching for the vaccine,
Uh-huh.
they always told us like it's gonna take time. It's gonna take a long time because it doesn't matter if the vaccine works in the beginning, because the long-term waiting will be for testing, for making sure that there are no side effects or things like that. And since Pfizer said we have the vaccine, nobody talks about that anymore, and I'm a little scared because it's like, are we actually really safe then? I don't want to get shot of that and get rid of the COVID-19 and get something even worse 5 years later. It's like a little
Oh, I
tricky.
get it, man. No, there's that, and there's, in my opinion, there's a lot to be concerned about. I mean, you're
Yeah,
just being smart, I mean, but you got to think about this. The one thing they don't want to talk about is like 31 million people worldwide have recovered from COVID.
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
they don't
So
want to talk about that. I'm one of them. My whole family had it.
yeah,
The only
you had it.
the only thing that was kind of a drag is losing your sense of taste and smell.
Oh, that must be
Well, I
horrible.
mean, unfortunately, I got it back in time for American Thanksgiving. It's an eating holiday, so I'm all
Oh yeah,
about that. And that was cool. I'm also I love to cook. I'm an aspiring chef, so not being able to taste was a drag. But
yeah,
in my experience, for real, it's just, as far as the numbers are concerned, it's just another strain of the flu. Whether or
yeah,
not it was made in a lab as a bioweapon, I really don't know. All I know is that the recovery rate is, 99.6% or something crazy.
yeah,
And if you look at the numbers, worldwide, it's the exact same as the seasonal flu that comes in. There are people that are at risk, the older folks and the people with the conditions. And I'm not minimizing that, but those are the people, in my opinion, that need to be protected and stay home, while the
yeah,
rest of us go out and do our concerts and get back to life. Because the one thing they don't talk about is where we all come in. Our job is to make people feel great. Our job is to make people feel awesome, and they love going to shows and putting their fists in the air and having a great time and feeling the community with like-minded people who like the same kind of music. We haven't
yeah,
had that in a year. And man, people are depressed. Not only are they depressed, they've had enough
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
being on
You're
house
right.
arrest and being dictated to about what they can and can't do. Because man, life is short, and no one wants to spend a percentage of their life they're never going to be able to get back being locked in their homes, no matter how awesome their home is or isn't.
Yeah,
Relationships are getting strained. People are getting depressed. Alcoholism is up. Drug abuse is up. All of these things that, being in a normal year where you actually can go out and go see shows and hang out with your friends and your family,
yeah,
don't seem to be as much of a factor. So man, 2021 can't get here fast enough as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. I mean, the one thing that people had to thank during the confinement, the actual confinement, was the good news from Gunnar daily. I don't know how you could do that. I mean, it's incredible. It's so amazing.
Oh man, thank you. Thank you. Well,
It's
yeah,
so
look,
encouraging. I had no words. I was like, man, this guy is every fucking day doing this, and he always has something good to say.
oh, thank you,
It's
brother.
so
Hey,
incredible.
look, I here, thank you. I think that, just in life in general, the way I've always been, you get what you
I
focus
know.
on, right?
I know.
So look, the stimulus is going to be the same. I've got 3 beautiful daughters. I tell them this all the time. It's like everything in life that you can and can't control is going to come in. It's going to affect you. Now, the only thing you do have control over
How you react.
is how you perceive it, what you
Yeah.
focus on in that. I have a friend of mine. I'm not sure if you're aware of him from back in the day, Jack Ponte, good songwriter,
Yeah.
friend of mine.
I do. I do.
Um, and he's like family to me. And he's also like one of these, we all have one of these cut and dry people in our lives who have no bullshit. They just say what's on their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And And when we first started working with Jack, this is a long, long time ago, he said to me and my brother, and he meant this kind of as a dig, as a criticism. He said, I've never met anybody that can make more out of nothing than you guys. Now he meant that as a slight. And I went, thank you. And he goes, I didn't mean that as a compliment. And I said, listen, growing up like I did with an alcoholic mother and with all this stuff, trust me, I take that as a compliment because man, I'm one of these guys that could be in a room full of shit and I'm going to be the one going, there's a pony in here somewhere, you know? But, you know, I think that, I think that's important though, especially nowadays. You know, the one thing that this whole COVID thing has done, in my opinion, is gotten me reconnected with the little things in life that really matter. And less so with the stuff that doesn't matter. You know, I've been on this treadmill where I was going out and doing the weekend touring thing. You know, we'd leave on a Thursday or Friday. We'd fly to certain places in America. We'd do our concerts. We'd come back on Sunday or Monday. It'd be 2 days at home just to kind of like recover, repack, and then we'd be out doing it again. Man, I did that for 30 years. You know, and I love doing shows, don't get me wrong, but I never stopped in that 30 years to kind of reflect on why I was doing it other than just to pay the light bill. I was like, why am I doing this? And is there anything that I'd rather be doing? And I realized that what I would rather be doing is a different kind of show with a new project and a new band that I'd been envisioning for years and years. And the lockdown, this whole last year of not touring, of getting off the treadmill, has, my blessing is that what I've chosen to see in it, it's given me the time to write and record for that new project that I've been kind of in my head wanting to do for the last 10 years, but I've been so busy I wasn't able to do it. So I think it comes down to this. You know, I always say in the good news posts, you have this opportunity, all of us do, especially when we're being kept at home or we're not allowed to go out and work. Let's say you work as a server in a restaurant and they closed your restaurant or something like that. I'm not saying financially it's going to make it any easier, but you know, human beings are really good at doing the pivot at when something happens and it takes us off of our norm and our schedule. We can kind of like retool ourselves and learn something new, like learn a new skill that maybe they can monetize from home to where they don't have to go out all the time and do all that stuff. Or maybe, you know, they call, we do cameo videos, let's say. I'm not sure if you're aware of those, but they're really cool, man. I mean, it's like I can do them on my own time for the fans. We can sing a little bit of their favorite song or wish them a happy birthday or something. And that's a side hustle that we can do to provide for our families. And the more that we can do that, the less reliant we are on any one thing. Like I'm sure, you know, being in the band that you've been in and working that way, you know, for the last 25 years, they've kind of sucked all the money out of our business. And people don't understand that. You know, like when we were all starting out, I mean, the whole goal was, okay, you work hard, you get a record deal, or you work hard, you build a following. The buzz starts, the record companies come down, they see you do your thing, you get signed, you make a record. They release the record, you get, back then it was like a couple of, you get a successful video on MTV, and then you've made it. And that doesn't work that way anymore. And back then, you know, we would give away the shows as kind of like promotion to sell the records because our business model was selling records, right? Even the radio airplay was a commercial to sell the records. Now, the one thing that changed completely with Napster, when that whole thing happened, man, it was like the horse is out of the barn now. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. There's no more money in selling records anymore because kids are now growing up believing that music is free. Now, again, this is starting 25 years ago. This is not today. I mean, this is 25 years ago. So people like you and I had to kind of like look at it and go, okay, well, I love making music and I do it because, man, my heart tells me I have to. I can't imagine a life without doing that. I love it so much. I want to do it. So how can I do it and still, you know, feed my family? And so it's done in reverse. So rather than giving the shows away to sell the records like we did 25 years ago, now we're pretty much giving the records away to sell the shows. Now that's the paradigm. That's the way it was a year ago. And then of course, enter COVID-19 and they take that away from us too. We can't do that anymore, right? Matthew and I were on, we were touring. We had a run of shows 6 days in a row on the Canadian border with the United States. It was a big like casino venue. It was 3,000 people, a really nice venue. And we were sold out.
A big trip you did in a van, something like that, or in a truck. I think you posted some things like that.
Oh
And,
yeah, yeah. Well, we actually were in the middle of this run. It was 8 sold out shows,
hmm,
and they came to us and they said, "Hey, there's this new disease that's out, and we're canceling the shows after today's matinee, and we're gonna send you guys home tomorrow." And of course, it was a little scary because when we all go out and we do our touring and stuff. I mean, you don't want to be away from the people that you love when a cataclysm happens.
yeah,
It's the first thing you think of is like, I mean, how can I get home to my loved ones, right? And we were really far away. It was very difficult actually to do that last show that afternoon, knowing that
yeah,
they had canceled the rest of the run. That I mean, I was looking out on this beautiful audience, going, well, this is really tough to do emotionally and mentally because a lot of these people that we're playing for are in that dangerous age group that they're talking about is really exposed to this and might not survive, right? So, I mean, we went out there and we played the show, not just like it would be possibly our last show, but possibly their last show too. And that was like a really a difficult mental thing. And then, of course, we rushed right to the airport there in Canada. We rented a minivan and we drove the 16 hours
yeah.
across the border all the way home. And that really honestly was the last show we've gotten to do up until this week. We actually have 2 coming up, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm a little concerned to fly because,
Yeah, me too.
as somebody who has already had this and has recovered from it, they're still kind of overbearing at the airport. And as a
Yeah,
guy who does the good news every day, I follow the data. I know the truth of all of this stuff. And I think there's a real balance between, first off, I think safety is an illusion. I don't think there's any such thing as it. I mean, I think that life in general, if you live it, by its nature is dangerous. If you get in a car,
yeah,
there's a chance. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a line that you have to draw between, all right, well, you don't necessarily need to be stupid. I mean, you don't want to make a habit of running red lights, but if you want to go get the groceries, you might need to get in a car and go drive someplace, right? There is some danger inherent in life in general.
Yeah.
And I think anybody that tells you differently is trying to sell you on something. So as people who are adults and have lived a dangerous lifestyle, so to speak, going out and touring all the time and traveling, I always tell my wife and my kids that is the hardest part to me of being a musician. Like you and I would do a show, brother. I'm not going to tell anybody. I won't let him in on it, but we would do a show for free any day. We've done them for years.
Yeah.
When we were working our way up and stuff with our school bands and stuff and having that dream, how many shows have you played where it cost you money because the club owner charged you for the parking and the beers you drank, And then, when you catch a lick that's really cool and, make a little taste of money here and there, but that's not what it's about, at all to do what it is we do. You have to love it so much that you're willing to do that. And I tell my wife, my kids that we would do the show for free. We actually don't make our money for doing shows. What they really are paying us for is dealing with the situations that COVID-19, let's say, brings upon us, the canceled flights, the dangerous travel where you're renting a car and driving in the ice and snow for 6 hours to the next gig in the middle of the night. That's
Mhm.
what we get paid for, being away from home, being away from the people that we love, playing sick, singing hurt and performing hurt, all of those things that we've done for years and years and years. It's just kind of what we do. And I don't think there's anybody in our business, you, me, your friends who are still doing this after all of these years that don't feel the same way. We're a little crazy. We're a
Yeah, yeah.
little
You
insane.
have to.
But times like this are exactly what we were made for. Our job is to completely ignore any danger that's out there or anything we're being told about, or you're putting yourself in harm's way, because our job is to minister to our fans when they need comfort, when they
Yeah.
need to feel like it's going to be okay. And,
Yeah.
there's nothing like, listening to your favorite music live at a show and doing something just that has no practical application at all. You just want to blow off some steam and listen to your favorite band that makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. More
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I did something quite like that. We were confined by law, not like you, that you were self-confined, I think, on your conscience, right?
Yeah.
We were not forced to do it, but we did. We were like for a month and a half, something. It was like war. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I decided to start with the live streaming things, and
Good for you.
I
Yeah.
wanted to I wanted, but I didn't want to sit with my guitar and that's all. I wanted to get my effects and things like that. So I put everything through a speaker and pointed in the window while I was sound checking, and then I
Cool.
stopped. I was like, "Sweet Home Alabama," and stopped.
Huh?
And then I heard "Whirr" from outside, like I was Bon Jovi or something like that. And I went like, "What's happening there?" And my girlfriend went like, "All the neighbors are in their windows." It's like, "Yeah, yeah."
Yeah,
So
right?
I decided to do that daily.
That's great.
Three or four
Yeah.
songs daily through
Uh-huh.
the whole confinement, and
See,
that
now that's you taking your gifts that you have and doing
yeah.
your part, because you're really doing your part. It is, to me, amazing that they don't talk enough about the effect all of this has had on people's hearts and minds. That's
Mm-hmm.
been the most difficult thing by a long shot. It hasn't been the illness. It hasn't been even the mortality numbers. It's been, everything else in between, the depression and the alcoholism and the ruined marriages and the broken friendships and all of those things. Human beings are social creatures. We're
Yeah.
meant to actually find communion with each other. That is what's really difficult. So I personally, look, I'm biased because I'm a musician, and my life, my grandmother had a great expression. She was a musician as well. And she told me when I was growing up, and she saw me from a very young age, trying to write songs and perform. She said, always remember this: people that do what you do and what you want to do, we're not in the music business. You're not in the music business. You're in the connection business. That's what you do. You
Mm-hmm.
connect with people. You're on stage doing your thing. You know what it feels like to look out over your audience and see people connecting with you. You see it in their eyes. You see them mouthing the words to your songs back to you that you've written. And it's this visceral thing that you can feel. And
Yeah.
it makes you feel alive. And more importantly, it makes you feel like, and makes them feel like they're not alone. That you know what they feel like, and you care, that you actually give a shit,
Yeah.
And I think nowadays, it's tough because, clearly, doing podcasts and having to do things virtually, it's a necessity. You have to do it, and I get it. But it pales in comparison actually being there in person with people. Now, the bright side that you can look at is you can reach more people with your podcast than perhaps you can in an entire year worth of touring and
Yeah.
physically going there. And,
For instance,
you know,
how many times have you been playing in Spain?
yeah, right. Exactly. But every time I put something on the internet, who knows? Maybe I've got a fan in Spain that's going to check me out, which is
That's
great.
me.
Right. Well, I think it's going to be kind of a combination of both. I think
Yeah.
the future in 2021, in my opinion, is going to be cool, because I think all of us in our line of work are going to have learned all of these things that we've been putting off because we like playing live so much. We don't, especially when you're old school like me. I was on this one-man campaign against the internet, and
Yeah.
there's so many young artists that are coming up that literally built their entire career virtually.
Yeah.
That's all they've ever done. They've never gone out and done a live show.
Yeah.
They've sat there in their studio with their camera on and done that and built their following. In
Yeah.
hindsight, who's smarter? I mean,
Like,
it is the world.
like we say in Spain. I don't know if it's a saying there, but they are starting the house with the roof instead of
Yeah,
the foundation. So
yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
yeah. It is. It is. And look, I love the fact that I came from an era as an old guy here now, where I grew up working in a recording studio that had physical 2-inch tape.
Yeah.
That I got really good at cutting with a razor blade before computers came out. I mean, I got really good at editing, and then I learned this skill, and here come computers and stuff. But everything like digital recording came on the scene, and man, it was really expensive in the beginning to
Mm-hmm.
record digitally. Like, you had these Mitsubishi digital machines that were $1 million per machine. Now they're boat anchors. You can't give them away because every single computer that Apple sells has GarageBand in it,
Yeah.
and unlimited tracks. If you were to tell me 30 years ago, okay, in 30 years, all of these things that you need in order to make your record and be competitive, like you need a record deal, and you have to go into massive debt when you actually sign your deal. They get great, wonderful. They throw a party for you, which by the way, they're going to charge you for later. They give you this advance that you have to pay back at loan shark interest rates. You will never be out of debt, but there's a chance you're going to be famous. And we're like, where do I sign? Cool, let's do this, right? And nowadays, the blessing of technology is, okay, I agree that just because you can make music, if you're anybody, doesn't necessarily mean you should. But there are some people out there that, like yours truly, like I don't have to spend $500,000, let's say, on an After the Rain record, going into Cherokee recording studios at $1,500 a day just to rent the room.
Yeah.
And, spend months in there making that record and incurring a debt that I can never pay back. I actually can build my own studio in my home, which I have, and have a couple of key pieces of vintage Neve outboard gear that I record through and a great microphone. And as far as, when I combine all those tracks, when you're all said and done and you make a record like Lightning Strikes Twice, which sounds better than the After the Rain record, technically, and I did that at home and I did it all myself through all of my gear. I had no outside players, with a couple of notable exceptions on a couple of solos. Steve Lukather playing, solo on To Get Back to You was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I can do that at home, and I can do it in my own time and not feel the pressure financially. And I can also, not have like a record company guy calling me up every day going, where's the damn record? Let's go. This is actually kind of a nice time to be a musician. And I'm just really grateful that I do come from that old sensibility, that old school, where I'm really grateful for the convenience that I'm now afforded. And I mean, the thing like editing, just how's this? The concept of not having to wait for your tapes to rewind to make another pass and then lock up. You know what I'm talking about? It took forever,
I still remember the first time I even put a CD on a CD player, and I knew I could jump from song to song without
right?
Like crazy. Like what?
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's really actually kind of cool for guys like us, because we're never going to take that stuff for granted, you know, and it's potentially a really cool creative time. And I also believe that, given time, the stuff that's superior, the stuff that's great and inspired finds a market. It rises to the top, but you have to be consistent about it. You have to do things like, like for me, I felt completely helpless in the beginning of this lockdown thing. And so I started the Good News because it was just something I could do. I really couldn't do anything else. So, I thought, well,
it was cathartic in somehow to you too.
Oh, absolutely. It's much cheaper than therapy, for sure. But I was thinking in the beginning too, because the numbers of the viewers was, fairly low and kind of stayed consistent. But I thought, well, I have to be consistent with this. And maybe if there's just one person that's out there that catches one of the Good News episodes and it resonates with them, it connects with them in a good way, and makes them change their mind from doing something stupid on that particular day or so, then it's worth me doing.
Yeah.
And, and then the news is spreading, which is really kind of cool. And, what was remarkable to me is that, so much of the news that we see on television or on the internet is so focused around the negative. It's so geared around, getting you watching and scaring you into like reading the whole article and doing all that stuff. I didn't realize until I went into this how easy it is, if you're focused on it and you're looking for it, to actually find good news from all over the world every single day. You just have to cut through all the bullshit and find it, and it's actually pretty easy because, not being naive here, but actually just like bad stuff happens every single day, there actually is some really good stuff that happens every single day.
Yeah.
When the thing that was a little disheartening to me, to be honest with you, and I know I'm talking a lot, sorry, I just had my coffee.
No. That's great.
When I started this, in the beginning, because everybody was so terrified about COVID-19, I mean, we thought it was like an airborne Ebola or something like that people's heads were going to explode or something, because we didn't know anything about it. We kind of thought, hey, no one's really telling us the truth about this. if there's any good news that comes forward as far as therapeutics or, vaccine development or the numbers or whatever, wouldn't it be kind of cool if somebody actually said, hey, you know what? I know you've been hearing about all this other bad stuff, but here's the good stuff about it.
Yeah.
Like so-and-so's made a breakthrough in France in this one study, or this other study is pointing in this direction, or here's a therapeutic that's showing promise. That's how I started, was doing that. It was really more on like the COVID-19 thing. And then, God did a really interesting pivot on me because, we have an election that's still under contest here in our country. And so much that has happened in the media in this country over this last year. It's been horrifying how much control the media has had on kind of like a particular narrative. And so when I started, this is facts, by the way. I was using facts from our Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization. This is from their own websites, by the way. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I would ignore the bad stuff, but I'd look through the good stuff and I'd say, okay, well, all this other stuff is happening. But this one trial in the Philippines where they say they used hydroxychloroquine in a double-blind study in 2018 on 3,000 random people showed that this was an effective therapeutic. When I started saying things like that, mm-hmm. I started getting warnings put on my videos because it didn't fit a political narrative. And the irony was I was getting all of my data from their own websites. But because I was being too positive about the prognosis. And I was saying, wow, this is pretty interesting. If you look at the overall fatality numbers, the mortality rate worldwide, and they keep on saying, oh, the number of cases is going up, it's going up, it's going up. But I noticed the mortality figure was flat. When I said, well, a reasonable person would realize that actually the disease is far less lethal than they thought, because if the number of cases is going up, but the mortality figure is flat.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to be a Harvard laureate to understand that, there's something weird going on when they're going, oh, the number of cases. And I was saying, well, you should celebrate the fact that there's so many cases going up and up and the mortality figures are flat.
Yeah.
It means that it's either losing steam as a virus or it's less lethal than we had originally thought. And because we were all learning as we went, that would be reasonable to know, hey, man, this is something to get us excited about, to be honest with you. Or the fact that in Scandinavia, in the motherland, right? Yeah. The motherland.
Nelson.
They figured out that in the beginning of this, they thought herd immunity was going to require 70 to 80% of the population to get it and recover. And what they found out is actually the figure is closer to like 17 or 18%. That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Between, basically being able to filter this like a normal flu at 17% of the population, which, by the way, it looks like we've already surpassed. And when I started saying things like, again, just stats from the World Health Organization or the CDC, I started getting the powers that be putting warnings on my posts. And that was really disheartening to me because I thought, why would anybody not want people to be encouraged by any good news that they could find in this horrible thing that we're all dealing with? And so I started changing my themes of my good news slightly away from every day being about, COVID and breakthroughs, because it was weird. I didn't want to get banned altogether for one, telling the truth and being too positive about something that didn't meet, let's say, a political agenda. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, well, there's plenty of good news out there. I can do a pivot and I can, do other stories and I can mix it up with different things. And every now and again, if you'll notice, I sneak in a little good news about the fight against COVID. And I'm doing that for a reason. But, when all of this is said and done, we're going to look back on this in a couple of years. And I got to, for everybody else that's watching, I have to say this. It's going to be okay. There's no reason to be so afraid that you don't live your life. This is all going to be okay. We're all going to get through this. We always do. Look at your life in general. Every time you've been full of worry and doubt and fear about what's going on, and you look back on it a year or two later down the road when, of course, it's resolved itself in whatever way it did, even if it was a bad situation back then, you find out in the long run, that was actually a pretty good thing that happened, because if that hadn't happened, then this other opportunity or blessing wouldn't happen for you. You put yourself through so much more pain imagining the possibilities of the
anticipating.
bad shit that can happen than the actual thing that's going on. And honestly, your brain doesn't know the difference. Your brain cannot tell the difference between what you manufacture for it in your head and what is actually going on. And that's why so many people who live on the internet and live on mainstream media and watch the fear and the oppression and the aggression every single day, that's why they're getting depressed, because their mind does not know the difference between a real stress that sets off that whole fight or flight thing. Like, you know, it's like if someone pulls a gun on you, you either want to run or you want to fight, and you get that adrenaline dump. We've been doing that to ourselves ever since COVID-19 started. It's so weird. I mean, like, we're the ones that are holding the whip and beating ourselves with it. And we don't realize all we need to do is put the whip down and listen to some good tunes. We'll be okay. Everything's gonna be fine. You know, it will resolve.
Yeah. Let's change subject, because
Sure.
let's go to something more musical.
Cool.
I mean, musically, sorry. You guys had me from day one musically, but something else
Thank you,
grew.
man.
But something else grew on me after watching that home video you did. You know, the After the Rain home video. I bought it in VHS, and it's still at my mom's, I think.
Oh, that's awesome.
By the way, my mom's. Guess why? My mom calls you the Greyhounds, because of
The Greyhounds?
because they can cover.
Oh,
You know? So every time I
that's right.
play your music, she said, "Oh, the Greyhounds."
Oh, right on. Well, tell your mother I
And
said hello, would you?
and that's, yeah, okay, I will.
And
But
we were really lucky. You know, if you got that VHS tape, we had a really great band at the time. I
oh
mean,
yeah, I know.
our players were, I always say they were really overqualified for the pop music that Matthew and I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And back in that era, we really needed that, because, you know, we were talking about a time, if you cast your mind back, where every band had a guitar player that could beat up the next band's guitar player. You know, so an era of guitar heroes. And you know, of course, I had Bobby Rock on drums, who, you know, the legend back there looking like a sculpture with the muscles and the whole thing.
Yeah.
An amazing player, you know, now out with Lita Ford, but formerly with Vinnie Vincent and stuff, and just a Nitro, amazing drummer. Paul Berkovich on keyboards, who basically in America, he's like the musical director for all the big musical TV shows. So things like The Voice and America's Got Talent. He's the go-to guy for Hollywood. You know, I mean, like, you know, look, I'm a hack. He's a real musician. This guy knows his shit. I mean, for real, this guy's, you know, he's not playing bar chords. He's a great keyboardist and composer.
Yeah.
And when you put all of those people together and all of us actually really sang, you know, the one thing I got to point out, if you had the Nelson home video, or you even watched the video for the song More Than Ever. Now, More Than Ever was shot at a place called the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles. And the local radio stations put out word to all the fans, hey, we're going to be shooting a video for Nelson. Our band was brand new at the time. And we had no idea if anyone was going to show up, because we put out the videos for Love and Affection first and for After the Rain. And after both those videos were released, a few months apart from each other, you know, we put tickets on sale for our first tour, and no one bought tickets because they didn't think it was real. They thought it was like kind of like a made for, like a, you know, come on, look at me and Matthew. Look at what we used to wear. Come on, you know, I mean, I mean, I wouldn't believe that it was real either. So what we had to do is we had to go on a campaign finding a great band and going to all the radio stations across the country with acoustic guitars, singing and playing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that is on the home video. But if you were to just go up on YouTube and you were to see the video for More Than Ever, that was a live video. It was Wayne Isham was the director. He did the Bon Jovi Slippery When Wet videos. He did Living on a Prayer and stuff. The whole goal of doing that video was to show the fans that we were a real band, that we were like, it would be an exciting show to see. And, you know, it's kind of like musical propaganda. And it worked, fortunately, because we had a really successful tour after that.
I remember the middle part.
Yeah.
And that's all different from the recorded thing. Now,
you need to listen to that video again, because people don't know this. That actually was also recorded live while
There.
we were making the video. We actually rolled up a mobile truck, and we had, you know,
Oh,
48 tracks of analog, and the audio track you're hearing on that video was how we sounded live. That was us live. We didn't do any sweetening. That's the way it was.
yeah.
And the problem with that is that it was so close to the way the record sounded that no one realized that we'd spent all that money and taken that time to actually record a live track. They thought that we just basically put an audience into a recorded like studio thing, which we didn't do. But
Yeah.
that will show you how overqualified that band was. It was an amazing thing to actually be through. I wish we had more time, because when Nelson came out, it was like right
Yeah.
at the tail end of the whole confidence rock thing. And, you know, we were with John Kalodner at Geffen. He took a long time for us to put out that first record.
I
If he
know.
had
I know that
allowed us to,
story.
you know, yeah, if he'd allowed us to put it out sooner, and we had an extra 2 or 3 years, we would have had, you know, 2 or 3 more records. You know, we would have been able to release a record like Lightning Strikes Twice and Peace Out back then, and have established ourselves more. But on our own label, they signed Nirvana, and
Yeah.
they started doing grunge out of Seattle. And
I know.
then the whole record company changed. They fired all their staff. They got a bunch of kids in who wore flannel. MTV wasn't playing you unless you were from Seattle and you were grunge overnight. And a band like Nelson, we were on tour at the time. We were doing 13 months straight off that thing. We came back home and everything had changed.
Yeah.
And we were kind of like the last guys to know about it. And, you know, it was tough for the fans, but tougher on us, because our record company wouldn't allow us to leave Geffen and go some other place to record, because they couldn't risk a competitor picking us up and having more success. It would have been embarrassing to them.
Oh shit.
So they did what they contractually were allowed to do, which basically they kept on putting us back in the studio. Like at the time, that was the time Kalodner was making Aerosmith re-record entire records and stuff. And he was on a kick, and he was doing that. And he did that to us as well. I mean, we went in, we made the Imaginator record, and funny enough, it was about media domination and mind control. And we did that 30 years ago, you know, a little ahead of our time.
I like that
But
record.
but they wouldn't release it. They thought it was too heavy. It's like too heavy. And then 2 months later, Metallica comes out with a Black Album.
Yeah.
And you know, we just you know, wish we'd had a little more support than we had. And we saw that the media turned on us overnight and stuff. But here we are all these years later. And you know, when you realize like you're not in it, it's nice when people know about you and you get people at your shows. It's really great. And it's really cool when the media is behind you, or you've got a record company that believes in you and pushes you at radio. But, you know, also we were one of the first bands to start our own independent label. You know, I kept all the business cards when I would go. What's that?
Stone Canyon Records is the
Stone
name?
Canyon Records, yeah. And it was founded a long, long time ago when we started having problems with the label. Not a lot of people had really done independent records at that time. It was considered a real step down. And of course, this is before the internet, so it was all about distribution. But you know, what the fans need to know is like, okay, so we were based out of America. You guys were based out of Sweden, correct?
Norway, actually.
Norway. Okay, even better. So okay, so you're based out of Norway, but you go and you tour, and especially not just in Europe and all that stuff, but you also tour in the United States, and you do that. And in each territory, let's say in our case, we were signed on Geffen Records in America for a worldwide deal, but that doesn't mean that there's a Geffen Records in Norway. It doesn't mean there's a Geffen Records in Japan.
Yeah.
What Geffen Records does before you even get signed, they've done these distribution deals, these partnership agreements with labels that are a big deal in their own territory. And it's different in every territory. Like in Japan, they had JVC Victor, they had MCA, they had a label called King Records, and King Records was just in Japan, but that was a big deal at that time. And so when we would go and we would say, go to Japan, I was smart enough when we would meet the local record company people that Geffen had done a deal with, I was smart enough to keep their business cards when they handed them over and stay in touch with them every 2-3 months, you know, as the years would go by. And I had business cards from all those different record company guys from all over the world. And I didn't even know that we were going to like have problems with our label at the time, and the world was going to change. So what I did was, when it looked like it wasn't going to work out at Geffen, the musical landscape had completely changed worldwide. It was weird. It was like, attitude wise, like, you know, our whole thing, we came from that whole, we're halfway there and we're living on a prayer. I call it confidence rock. That's what we came from. And then grunge happened, and the whole attitude was, life sucks and you owe me.
Yeah.
And I'm a victim and you've made me a victim. And in my heart, I don't have any of that. It's very foreign to me.
Yeah.
Now I respect it, and it's art, and I get it, but I couldn't relate to it because as a human being, that's just not at all where I've ever come from. You know, my whole thing is like, man, life can suck, but if your life sucks, it's because you're not doing enough about it to fix it or change yourself. That's my attitude's always been.
Or
so
you don't want to. You don't want to.
Or you don't want to. You don't want it bad enough. Your reason why is not strong enough. You know, and you haven't sat down in front of the mirror and gone, why am I here? And what am I put on this planet to do uniquely that no one else can do better than me? You know, that there's a need for. There's all kinds of things that you can do, but there's like an 8-year period of time from like 1992 to the year 2000, when it's like they didn't play a fucking guitar solo for 8 years.
Yeah.
I mean, like, musicianship went away. I mean, dude, I still can't understand a word that Eddie Vedder sings. I can't understand the words at all. And I was curious, and I mean, look, I still think Chris Cornell was amazing. What a great rock singer he was. And there's some notable standouts, but I just didn't get the culture of that particular movement. It just, you know, a lot of people in the United States started listening to country music and listening to Garth Brooks because there was enough rock and roll with his presentation that it felt familiar enough to feel friendly to them. And so that you went through this whole line dancing craze and stuff in 90s country. That's why that movement happened. You had a whole bunch of disenfranchised people who, you know, grew up listening to Bon Jovi, who wanted more of that. And John himself had to go to Europe to earn a living for the next 8 years. He couldn't even do a tour in the States anymore because it was so hostile. It was just a really crazy time. And now here we are, you know, 2020, so much has changed. And culturally, a lot that's changed is like, you know, shoot, back in our day when we were growing up, if you wanted to get the chicks, you learned how to play guitar, period, end of story.com. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
And anybody who in our shoes that told you they got into music for a reason other than to meet chicks is lying straight up. Okay. So, you know, that's what we did. And nowadays, you know, there are a lot of people, at least before COVID, this is actually kind of encouraging. There were a lot of people I felt that kind of felt like learning an instrument was just a little too much work. Just a little too much to do. You know, why do that when you can go out and you can get a copy of Fruity Loops and make your own beats, and all of a sudden you're a producer.
Yeah.
By
and
doing a cut and paste. What's that? Yeah, and auto-tune. Well, you know, you basically get, you know, royalty-free samples and loops and stuff, and you can compose your own stuff.
You can
in
call
GarageBand.
yourself a musician. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for nothing. Now, what's really encouraging, did you know that because of COVID-19 and this whole year, that the major guitar manufacturers have had the best year in sales that they've had in 30 years?
I didn't. Whoa.
Yeah, it's very cool. We're going to, because of COVID, dig this, there's going to be a giant paradigm shift with the whole generation that's coming up right now. They've rediscovered Eddie Van Halen and Stevie Ray Vaughan and all the great players, and they had nothing, they had fuck all to do. So they stayed at home and they thought, you know what, why don't I learn guitar? They get a guitar sent to them, you know, and they've been in their bedrooms watching, you know, YouTube videos and instructionals and learning. When I found that out, I went, you know what? Guitar rock is not dead at all. As a matter of fact, you're going to see a whole new surge coming out of COVID, which is pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's you. You see the good stuff in diving in the whole shit. You can see the good stuff.
Look, we are so close to the shit right now. We can't see the good stuff that's going to come out of it. One of us, you know, none of us are magicians. We can't really tell the future, but there are indicators like something like that, You know, if there are a lot of people, if they've sold more guitars this year than they have in 30 years, well, there are going to be a lot of people out there that are going to want to do something with that new skill that they have. They're going to
Yeah.
write songs. They're going to put those songs out there on the internet and on the radio. And I'm so encouraged that, like, think about this. Quite possibly, quite probably, the best song that you have ever heard is still floating around there waiting for someone to bring it in and write it. It's going to happen. You know, I mean, look, I thought the first time I heard Photograph by Def Leppard, I thought, oh my God, what a song. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
and then I learned about Mutt Lange and I learned all this stuff. You know what? Tomorrow's Mutt Lange might very well be in a basement doing a podcast, learning guitar when he's not doing that or she's doing that. And,
Yeah.
and it might be the next Elvis is out there right now watching your podcast and going, you know, one of these days. That's actually pretty encouraging if you think about that.
Yeah.
And time again, it's been proven right to me. It's like, you know, you have to go through the shit in some respects to actually get reconnected to what you're grateful for and what you're thankful for, and not take anything for granted. I've been telling my kids forever, this is before COVID, they go, you know, Pop, you look worried. Why are you worried? And I said, well, because I think the world has had too much abundance for too long. They've had too much instant gratification for too long, especially if you grew up with cell phones and the internet, where basically anything you want, from information to goods and services, they're a mouse click away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that adage that if you don't work for it, you don't appreciate it. Things that are given are never appreciated, you know, but the things that you work for, boy, you really appreciate that. You know, when we were all young and broke and had to do whatever to get that first instrument, you've never loved an instrument more in your life than that piece of crap that you had to save and beg and borrow and steal to get. And it's the same thing with life in general. So I think coming out of this, man, I don't know about you, man, but I am going to appreciate the bullshit that I have to go through to go and do a show. This is something that I don't have to do anymore. It's turned into something I get to do.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to take the process for granted. You know, the bumped flights, or having to sing when you've got laryngitis and a cold, or, you know, missing your family at home. That's something I get to do. It's not something I have to do. And I guess that's another good thing coming out of this year. You know, my mind's kind of changed.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, changing the subject to the singing part. I'm curious, do you have any pre-show routines for your voice, or any routine in general to keep it in shape, or something like things like that?
Well, you know, when we were on the After the Rain tour, it was a different time. Like, okay, I was 21, 22, right around that age. And when I was writing the first record, we didn't even really think about the future, being that, you know, it's one thing to go into the studio and sing a song once. And back then, especially being a rock singer, you know, you're in Brad Delp land, you're in Boston land, you're up really high and you're doing that whole thing and you're belting. You know, we took vocal lessons for years and stuff to try to bridge your different voices. And the goal of that was not just to sound better, but to keep your voice if you have to use it every single day. But it was really kind of an eye-opener when we went from the studio phase of recording the record and having to sing those songs just one time, to having to go out on a world tour for 13 straight months and have to sing at that in the top of your range, using your chest voice for 2.5 hours every night.
Yeah.
And even worse, like if you have like one tough night, let's say you've got a cold that you're fighting, or you've just been doing it too long and your voice is fatigued, and you don't have the presence of mind to use your technique and use your zen and not push too hard, you know, you can hurt yourself and then get behind because you have yet another show the next day and the next day and the next day.
No time to
you know,
recover.
I've found that was the most difficult thing for me, and that's a really good question, was being on that first tour for the first time and going out there and having to be the guy who's responsible for all of the entertainment that these thousands of people a night paid their hard money to go and see. It's a lot of pressure.
No pressure.
You know, No, people don't think about it. And there, you know, what I've learned is that there are some people that are able to do that kind of singing, and their instrument naturally is, they're bulletproof. I mean,
Yeah,
tough.
I know.
And,
Yeah.
they don't need a ritual. They don't need to, they just go out and they just belt it out. Most of those people I've also found really don't give a shit how they sound every night. I do actually. I take it very seriously, and you know, I want it to sound as close to the record as possible. But you know, I did learn that if you do get behind and you don't have certain breaks built in to a tour like that, at the time we had a manager that didn't turn out to be a very nice guy, and he was all about the money, the money, the money, the money. So I mean, there was, I mean, I would come to him after doing this for like 3 months, say, look, I need 2 weeks off to rest this and to rest this. You know, I just need a break. It's like, well, we can't give you a break. You know, you can't take a break right now. You got 45 people on a crew. You got the buses, you got the trucks, you've got the venues, you know, you'll go broke, and so on and so forth. And so, you know, for about 1.5 years straight, it was 6 to 7 nights a week. And it got to the point towards the end of that tour where, you know, I was having to, you know, write down things on a pad during the morning, and I wouldn't even start doing my exercises until noon or 1 o'clock. And, you know, steaming in the shower in the hotel rooms, and, you know, really trying to keep my head together, because I mean, there've been plenty of nights or plenty of mornings when I've woken up with nothing but air coming out, like just no voice whatsoever. And you know,
Wow.
that at 8 o'clock that night, you've got
do
3,500 people that expect you to be on your game. That's the hardest thing to me as a singer.
Yeah.
Is actually, it's really more of a mental thing than anything. And when I put this brand new trip together, you know, I never wanted to be one of those bands with Nelson where I was having to drop the keys to a point where the songs were unrecognizable. I hate it when bands do that.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it, but I still hate it when it happens. But with this
Yeah.
new project that we've just written during this shut-in time, it's called Firstborn Sons. And it's a country rock thing. It sounds kind of like Lynyrd Skynyrd meets the Eagles with Joe Walsh. It's very cool, very guitar driven. You know, it's you'll hear it. You'll go, that's a natural fit for Nelson. It's
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah.
But I intentionally wrote those songs in a more comfortable key to sing. So people, when they're released, people will get used to hearing them that way. Because I'm now anticipating, as a veteran, I'm anticipating it being successful, because no one plans on success. But being able then to comfortably go out and sing all of these songs in a comfortable range 7 nights a week, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because frankly, you know, the mind fucking that goes on with, hey, can I actually throw down at tonight's show, or am I too hurt to do this? You know, it's too much. It causes like really bad anxiety.
It's
and
training.
Yeah, and when you have anxiety, man, it's not fun to rock, man, when you're feeling anxious, you know?
Yeah. We singers have a huge problem, unless you are one of those guys you say that they are bulletproof.
Right? You've met
The
them
problem,
too, and I'm so jealous of those guys. You know, I see them; they never have to worry about it. It's like, God, damn it, you're singing up in the sky, and you never do a warm up in your life, and you're at loud clubs after the show, and you're drinking and you're smoking, and it never affects you, right?
Yeah. You're talking.
You know, I'm the guy who's like on vocal rest and drinking my herbal teas, and you know, having to get a certain amount of sleep at night, and I can't go to a loud club afterwards, and I, you know, can't be around cigarette smoke, and you know, I'm one of my voice. I have to really be careful.
Yeah, me
if
too.
I'm on a tour. Yeah,
I have no social life when I'm on tour.
Now you're not alone. Doesn't that feel a little better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally.
You're not a freak. We're all that way. You know, I did have one guy in our band, our friend Joey Cathcart. He was one of those guys. He was singing the super high harmonies.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always really annoying, because this kid, since he was a baby, I mean, his mom was a famous singer. His aunts were famous singers here. And that guy just never had a problem with his voice, no matter what. Never.
Yeah.
You know, no warm-ups, no nothing. He's hitting the notes and everything's cool. I'm just sitting there going, gosh, I'm such a schmuck. I have to do all of these things, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, ultimately it was worth it. But that was the one thing that I did actually learn. Like nowadays, back in the Nelson days, before a show, you know, you had your routine and your ritual. I had my vocal warm-ups that I had to do, and all that stuff. And then I had, when I got back to the hotel after the show, a warm down I had to do. I had to take a second shower, steam up my voice, you know, do a gentle warm down before I went to sleep, because, you know, your vocal cords get inflamed. And,
Yeah.
I had to, sleep propped up and stuff. So I didn't get any acid reflux, burning my cords again while I slept. They're little things that you do. But nowadays, it's really cool because the songs are written in an appropriate key to still sound good and get the song across. That's not going to torture me anymore.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And the other side of singing with you two guys is the harmonies. I particularly believe that the harmonies and the backing vocals are a crucial part in a band.
Yeah.
That's what makes a difference. It's what makes a difference between a great band, a good band, and a great band. I think you see that live, you see they perform greatly, and say, okay, yeah, they're cool. But when they all sing, your face out off, and wow,
Yeah.
and
It's
that's
well,
that's great.
we grew up in Southern California here in the United States, and we actually came up in a different background than people assume. People think that Matthew and I kind of started our band during that whole Sunset Strip era with the Poisons and the Motley Crues and the Warrants
Yeah.
there on the Sunset Strip, and that's not true. Matthew and I started a lot earlier than all of those bands. We actually, growing up with our father, who was a famous musician, always encouraged us to go out and do things. Matthew and I were playing the nightclub scene professionally in Los Angeles when we were 12 years old. So we started about 10 to 15 years earlier than all of these other bands that we're mentioning. And the music scene was different in California at the time. The hair band thing was not happening yet. That wasn't a scene. It was the scene that was going on before then. There were two factions of music. One was the punks, like the legitimate punks. Like we're talking like the Germs, the Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, like the hardcore American punk acts. And then you had the pop guys with the skinny ties that always seemed to have a "the" before their name, like the Knack and the Go-Go's and the Bangles, like the ultra pop people. And Matthew and I kind of like fit somewhere in between, but because we were so young and kids, we got escorted into the nightclubs to perform and then escorted out because the clubs here were serving alcohol and stuff, which was a problem in the States, not so much in Europe. But
yeah, I know.
Basically, we started so young in Southern California that the scene when we were babies growing up and our father was making his music, it was during that whole Southern California, they call it the Laurel Canyon sound scene. There was a small club called the Troubadour Club in Los Angeles. And there were bands when I was a baby that were playing that club with our father and coming over to the house all the time. And like Linda Ronstadt, Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills and Nash, all of those bands were the people that were over at our house. Bob Dylan and George Harrison and all of these people were at our house when we were kids. And that musical scene, was all about the vocals. I mean, if you think about Crosby, Stills and Nash, I mean, these guys were just like sitting around the family kitchen, because they stopped over for an afternoon and they just bust out into like a human harmonica. They'd sound, but everybody did it. So it wasn't special. It wasn't considered something that you weren't supposed to do because everyone took it for granted. If you grew up during that era, think about all of the vocals that was happening
The Eagles.
With that kind of music. It was just amazing. So when Nelson actually was built, we had two sensibilities that we were raised in. One was the arena rock that we enjoyed. So we like listening to like Queen, Heart, Bad Company, Foreigner, all the arena rock bands, right? But we'd also had a background as small children with the whole American folk scene that I mentioned and all those people singing. So when Nelson was put together, our dream band at the time was a band that could incorporate the pageantry of those arena rock bands I was talking about with the vocals and the songwriting of the folkies that we grew up with as kids. And if you listen to Nelson's sound, that's why it's so different from, let's say, Guns N' Roses, which is really heavily influenced by 1-4-5 blues. That's their thing. It's a blues band. Aerosmith, blues band. AC/DC, blues band. Great bands, okay? But they come from that place. No one would ever believe that Matthew and I, lived the blues lifestyle and struggled as we were growing up because we had famous parents. So they just kind of assumed that wasn't a part of our karma. So we went in an opposite direction. We incorporated that folk vocal thing with the corporate arena rock sound, and did our own thing, which, you know, back then it was really cool because it was very unique and it sounded different when it came over the radio. You just kind of went, I mean, who the fuck's playing an electric 12 string in the beginning of a song, you know, a rock song? It's crazy. And but that's really cool. It made it difficult in the long run because it was really hard for us to find bands that we could package with and go out and tour with that would make sense, you know? Because there were, I mean, we went out with Taiketo, you know, I love Danny Vaughn's voice.
Enough, I think.
Yep, Enough's Enough and stuff. And, you know, bands that weren't, you know, like your typical blues rock band thing. I mean, like Enough's Enough, if you could tell. I mean, it's very heavily
I love them.
Beatles influence. Yeah, me too. You know, I always loved DAD. You know, I just thought that, you know, Sleep My Day Away was just a monster thing, you know. But what I loved about it is that, you know, the guitar player was going out there with a Gretsch 6120 and, you know, twanging away and stuff while everybody else is shredding. He's out there, you know, with great, and see, that's the stuff that I loved. I love it all, but that's the stuff that I always gravitated towards, was the stuff that was really musical, you know, and different.
Yeah. Do you guys, you and Matthew, have different vocal ranges?
Yeah, Matthew seems to be able to sing slightly higher than me. You know, what we decided when we put together our sound is, rather than approaching it like a typical band would have their lead singer, and then, you know, from our era, you'd go to the chorus and there'd be the big stacked background vocals and stuff, and then you'd have your harmony singers in the chorus. Matthew and I decided when we were putting everything together to have 2 lead singers. We call it co-lead. Okay, so we really approach it like 2 lead singers singing together. What we found naturally in putting all the demos together for that first record is that my voice was far better for that chesty, you know, ballsy, you know, main thing, and Matthew had a slightly higher range, was more comfortable singing up high, and it just seemed to work out. Where we could kind of be the rock and roll version of the Everly Brothers, because that whole brothers thing, you know, doing their thing, it just seemed to work out that way. And when we wrote our songs, we actually really always wrote the songs with a co-lead vocal thing all the way through. So you notice it, we don't wait for the harmonies to happen in the chorus. You know, we're all over the verses together and stuff. I mean, I would say, like, vocally speaking, I'm more influenced by a band like The Outfield than I am, you know, Aerosmith. If that makes any sense.
More ballsy.
Yeah.
And but how do you guys decide who is going to lead sing in one particular song? I mean, does it depend on the key or vocal range?
It's pretty much, with a couple of like real notable exceptions. Like on that first record, we were still kind of trying to find our feet. So we had a song called Bits and Pieces, and Matt sang the lead vocal on that. With a couple of real notable exceptions in our entire career from that point, I've been the guy who's done the main vocal, and you know, it's pretty much always been me. It's just, you can tell the difference between our lead vocal qualities if you listen to a song like Bits and Pieces, and then you listen to a song like More Than Ever that I sang the lead on. You can tell the difference between the two. And Matt's voice is really, really well suited for that co-lead thing, but I've got to put the foundation down first.
So it's not something like the Beatles used to do, that the guy who comes with the original idea of the song, it's the one who lead sings it.
Well, there's really not really. I mean, there's really, if Matthew were to come to me and say, I've just written this song and it's really important to my heart and I want to be the person who sings the main vocal, I'd be totally cool with it. But it's not like, you know, every single song we flip a coin and we go, okay, you're singing lead. You know, it doesn't happen that way. We kind of, it's cool after all this time of making music together. We have our different strengths, and they really actually combine to make a creative process that really works. I've always been the guy who, I love writing songs. I love recording in the studio. I am like, and I try to explain this to people, like we did a couple records for Frontiers in years past, and I like those guys just fine, but I think a lot of their artists basically with no disrespect, there's been a history of some artists out there farting out a record and putting a pretty package on it and calling it the new album and not putting any time into it. And I had to explain to them, that's not the way a Nelson record is made. If we're talking about a Nelson record, I mean, think about what goes into making a Boston record or a Def Leppard record.
Yeah.
And that's closer to the process that a proper Nelson record goes through. It's composed and orchestrated, and you know, those lush background vocals that sound like 60 people are singing. 60 people are singing. They all happen to be me. And you have to do each one of those tracks one at a time. So it takes a certain amount of time. And I just said, look, it's just a matter of physics. This is what is required to, if you want a Nelson record, to put a Nelson record together, this is what it takes. Matthew respects that. But as OCD as I am with that process, he's ADD. So he's like short attention span theater. He's very kinetic. He hates that part of the process. He hates, you know, like me having to cycle over a snare drum sound for 20 minutes just to get it right. You know, he hates that part of it. And I respect him for that. You know, he put a side band together called Red 37, great music. And he brags to this day about the fact that they basically rehearsed this stuff. It was a power trio. They went into the studio. They played all the stuff live. They were done with the record in 3 days. And it's a great record. But it's that kind of record. It sounds like a power trio. It's incredibly raw. And the players were great. And it's wonderful. But it's not Nelson. It's not what Nelson has ever done or will ever do. And I think that really comes from the fact that, you know, we've never really had, and I'm jealous of people who've had friends that they put a band together with or grew up with, who they can bounce their enthusiasm off of and get some of that back and get that energy going. And they go and rehearse and they're really tight with their sound. And then they just go in and they record quickly and they do the whole thing and they can be really prolific. I've never been blessed with that in my entire life.
I don't think me neither.
And I, you know, it's wonderful for me to see, like, you know, I see these bands that legitimately grew up together, and they have their ups, their blessings and their curses too. Cause you know, bands like that do tend to kind of like break up from time to time, you know? Oh, excuse me. My dog's going crazy. One of the things about doing podcasts. But I've never had that before. And I really do wish that I actually had access to that, because it does tend to get a little lonely when you're in the studio at 4 o'clock in the morning by yourself, putting something together. It would be so cool for me to be able to call a group of friends and say, hey man, I've got this germ of an idea for a song, you know, come on over and let's just bounce it around, see what happens, you know? Who knows, maybe in the future, you know, I catch another lick and I get to that scenario. It'd be really cool to be able to do, because in this cell phone that I'm actually filming this interview on, I have about 300 songs that are recorded that are just like rough vocal acoustic, just to document it, get it down. Man, it'd be a dream come true to be able to call a group of guys and say, hey, here's this. Let's take it to the next level. Let's jam on it. Let's have some fun.
But you need to cook that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm in the right city to do that. I mean, Nashville is very much like that, you know, and if you move to Nashville, then, you know, I can call you and we could actually work on stuff, you know. Some wacky looking guy just showed up here. What the hell?
Hello.
What the hell?
What the hell?
Hi. How are you? Yeah, we got a rehearsal coming up here. We're only doing 2 shows this year. One is a Christmas show, and one is just kind of like a 1 hour sort of blended set thing. Okay. And man, it's crazy. I'm never nervous when it comes to doing shows, but I am this week because it's been a damn year. So
yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared of not when it comes to time. I don't know if I'm a little how to say it. I'm unsure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, normally.
Will I remember this? Will I still remember this? Will I be comfortable in the States now?
Well, you too. I mean, like I was playing my telly yesterday, and my fingers kind of went to where they're supposed to go. You know, kind of. But when you have an identical twin, you know, every time I blow a clam on a guitar, and you get, you know, someone looking at you from the stage going, you know, I have to be very careful.
What are you talking about? I'm looking at it.
I have to be very, very careful because
you know what you have to do. This is something I do. I usually do when I'm playing live. You know, I'm rocking my guitar, and then I fuck it up, and then I look like that to the other guy, and I say,
yeah,
no,
like
like,
you. Yeah.
what did you
If
do,
you're
man?
a typical guy, though, you could blame the gear. The best thing to do is take your guitar and look at it like, what the heck happened here, right?
Gunnar thinks he has it bad. You should try playing with Phil X and blowing a clam on stage. That's really fun. Oh yeah.
Yeah, well,
Whoa.
that guy's perfection.
Whoa, the both of you there, man.
Yeah.
Tell me,
we're here in our rehearsal space. You know, we live in Nashville, Tennessee, and
everybody does live there now.
What's that?
Every musician, so back every 80s musician lives now in.
Well, there are a couple of reasons for it. You know, as far as like the society is concerned and everybody's attitude, it's a lot like Los Angeles was 35 years ago, before it went to shit. You know, it's very everyone supports each other. You know, and it's a town based on music. It's not just country music, which is wonderful, but you've got all these rockers that moved in from Los Angeles, from New York, from Chicago, and they moved here because it's a great place to raise families. It's very inexpensive. Like when you compare it to New York or Los Angeles, you can have twice the lifestyle for half the money. Even though that's starting to regulate now because so many people are moving here. But we also enjoy some great freedoms and stuff that they don't, let's say in Los Angeles or New York, like your example was in Spain there. They locked you down. It was illegal to go out. And as close as it's come in the United States because of our wonderful Constitution that makes that impossible. Ultimately, you have these tyrants in places like New York and California that are overbearing and put these mandates out, which actually aren't laws. They're just like, we want you to do this. Yeah. And there's so many people that just unfortunately trust the wrong people, and they do that without questioning it until enough people get pissed off and they sue their government, and then it goes to our Supreme Court, and then they're told, you know, Governor, you can't do that. Fortunately for us here in Tennessee, we don't have that, which is wonderful. We're right here in the middle of the country. They let us live our lives, which is great. And I think that's why there's so many people during the shutdown time that are actually moving here, because they miss those freedoms. You know, they miss the ability to make their own choices. Yeah. And the benefit is, like, when you walk into a place here, like in Los Angeles is really built on the TV and film business. That's really what they do. They're great musicians out there, don't get me wrong, but that's not the number one industry. The number one industry in Hollywood is Hollywood, right? Okay, so like, let's say you go into a bank for a loan in Hollywood and you're a musician and they ask you what you do for a living and you say you're a songwriter. They look at you like you got 6 heads. You know, you're like you're a dreamer. But if you are out here in Nashville and you go into a bank for a loan and they ask you what you do for a living, you say you're a songwriter. They go, oh, cool, how much you want? You know, that's basically the thing, is because this is the industry here. And I think for a lot of musicians that were living in other places that were trying to force that fit, it's actually a real relief to actually be in a place that is you know, has so much great music being made, you know, all the time, and so many great players. I mean, the joke here is like, the person serving you your coffee at Starbucks just, you know, wrote the last Garth Brooks #1. You know, I mean, everybody here plays 6 instruments. Everybody here is a great writer. Everybody here can sing. That's just what they do. And it's kind of like, you know, if you play, if you're a tennis player and you're playing with tennis pros as a teenager growing up, your tennis game is going to be great. It's kind of the way it is here with music. So you should move to Nashville.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the fact that people taking seriously live music. I mean, there's a culture in the U.S. about people going out and having a drink and seeing a live band playing their own stuff. And there's you do that. You do those things. That's unthinkable here.
Right.
Yeah,
right. You know, there are places here that are just for up and coming singer-songwriters to go and do their new stuff. Like going and doing cover tunes is not cool, you know, and that's really kind of nice.
Yeah.
You don't really have places like that in LA anymore. I mean, you did when I was growing up, but not so much anymore. You know, if you want to earn a living there, you're in a cover band and you're doing your thing. But if you're here, you know, there are people that are professional songwriters. They've got a publishing deal with a major publisher. They do two different writing sessions per day. They do like a 10 to 2 and a 4 to 6. And they do 2 different sessions and stuff, and they get paid by their publishing company. Then they go home, they kiss the wife, they eat dinner, and then they go out and they play with their rock band at night. You know, so it's, you know, rinse and repeat every single day. And that's, I mean, what a cool thing, you know, for a musician, you know, for people who aren't musos out there, they don't understand what a blessing that is to be able to actually spend your life doing what you love to do, which is making music. And, you know, my grandfather always said, doing what you love to do for a living, getting paid for, it's like having a license to steal.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I felt like a thief ever since I moved to Nashville.
But you're not special anymore there because everybody does the same thing you do.
That's
Well,
cool, man. Just,
sort
I
of.
have to raise the bar and you know, just do better, you know?
Yeah, that's you have to be the sponge, you know, absorbing everything, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. Look,
Yeah.
I can learn something from every player that I play with, you know, but I am not shy about it. Like there's so many wicked guitar players here that if I'm just doing a pickup gig with somebody or something, someone does something amazing, I'll stop. Whoa. Show
What
me
was
that.
it?
What did you just do? Show me how to do that. Slow it down. Show me how to do it. I am shameless with that. And you know,
That's the right way.
my vocabulary as a guitar player is improved quite a bit, because when I started with Nelson, you know, everything was going through high distortion, high gain amps. And I love that. And I love the power and the attitude of that. But when I moved here and I started making the music that I've been making for the last 20, 30 years, which is the whole country rock thing, it's based on a slightly broken up telly sound, which is incredibly revealing.
Yeah.
You know, you
Can't
can't
hide anything
hide.
there.
You can't hide anything. You know, I mean, if it's, I mean, you'll sound like you're playing with boxing gloves on if you don't have your chops.
Yeah.
You know, and I felt really bad. A player, to remain unnamed, we had a country gig that, you know, he wanted to jump on stage and just play with us, and we were playing, you know, hardcore country at the time. And, you know, he's a, you know, metal guy, you know, very, very Ingve, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you know, I want to jump on stage and jam with you. And I warned him ahead of time. I said, listen, this is very specific. The vocabulary as a guitar player is pretty specific to do this. And it's a discipline. Like if you listen to somebody like Vince Gill or Brad Paisley or, you know, any of those master guitar players doing their thing, I mean, these people spent a lifetime learning this. And I felt so bad because he just insisted, and he had a girl in the audience he just started dating, he wanted to impress. And oh man, it was so rough. And I felt so bad for him, because like his normal gig, he could just crank the amp up to 11 and hide behind a wall of mush and a flurry of notes. And it wasn't that kind of gig. And I felt really bad about it. But to his credit, he came, you know, he was humbled, you know, after the show. And he said, well, you know, who do you recommend I listen to? And, you know, I should learn some of this for my bag of tricks. And he's a much better guitar player now because of it. But it took that moment of getting him out of his comfort zone as a guitar player and really embarrassing himself. Boy, it was hard to watch. Let me say, it was.
Oh, poor guy.
It was hard to watch, but
was he
it
playing
was
with
good
your
for him in the long
gear?
run. What's that?
Was he playing with your gear? You lent him your
No,
guitar?
well, yeah, he was playing with some guest gear. He brought his guitar, but he was going through another amp
Yeah.
and stuff. But
stuff.
in contrast, this wasn't like, you know, a modified Bogner or Marshall or Soldano that was turned up to 11.
Yeah.
This was a Fender Deluxe Reverb, you know, chimey and clean and all that. And you could hear, the problem for him was that you could actually hear
Everything.
for the first time what he was really playing.
Yeah.
Oh,
that must be a hard one for the shredders out there. Yeah.
It's humbling. It is.
Listen, if you have some things to do, we can stop. I mean, I could be here with you like
Look, me too. Look, we should do a part 2 for real. This is awesome. I've got a couple of awesome players coming over here, and they should be here any minute. So I am going to have to bounce and put together the rehearsal room and stuff and get ready for it. Like I mentioned, we got 2 more shows that we're doing, and one is in North Carolina in a few days, and on the weekend we're playing down in Florida, and that's a Christmas show. We do a Christmas show every year, and usually from the day after Thanksgiving, we're playing every single day all over the country with the Christmas show. That is actually really cool. But because of COVID, clearly, You know, the plans for that. I usually do 30 shows every Christmas season, like the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but can't do that. But we do have one.
Yeah.
And damn it, we're gonna make that one show great. You know.
I have 3. So.
That's right.
So well.
Look, man. Look, I am a fan, and I'm so pleased to be talking to you. So, you know, thanks for this. Let's do a part 2 later on down the road. Okay.
Okay. Do you have a pen and some paper there to write something down?
I'm not on me. But,
you have some good memory.
Oh, yeah,
I would like you to listen to one song.
Okay.
I would like you to listen to one song before we chat the second time. I would like you to listen to TNT, and the song is Sunshine.
Easy. Great.
Okay, because I think that's my business card for you.
Sunshine. You got it. All
Okay.
right. And in the meantime, I'm going to get your information. I'm going to send you some of the new project and show you what we're doing.
Okay. Nice.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, great talking to you, man.
Pleasure.
All right. Yeah. Forget being safe. Go out, risk, and take chances. Live life.
Okay.
All right.
Care, man.
See you, man.
So nice to meet you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.